Hi, it's Pastor Andy, and this week's videos, our daily videos, are going to be about the golden chain. I'm going to briefly explain each of the words in the golden chain. Now, you may remember that word from last Wednesday's video where I talked about the golden chain. I mentioned it on Sunday, the 21st, in my sermon as well. But these 5 words are all in the past tense, and it's a chain that Paul uses to help us move from what God knows all the way to, or knew, as the case might be, all the way to us being glorified. The idea is the golden chain that is how God conforms us to the image of Christ. These words are in Romans chapter 8, verses 29 and 30, and the 5 words are foreknew, predestined, called, justified, and glorified. Now, because this is Holy Week, what I'm going to do is I'm not only going to provide a brief explanation, and trust me, the explanation will be brief, of one per day, but I'm also going to try to tie them into Holy Week a little bit as we remember the sacrifice and celebrate the new life that Jesus has given in the context. Now, some words in the Bible are more challenging than others. Words that refer to God knowing what happens before it happens are among the most challenging. And the first 2 words that we see in the golden chain are those. If God knows what will happen, does that mean he causes them to happen? Could he change what happens if he doesn't like what will happen? Well, those questions are indeed valid, and they have caused several different explanations as well as many arguments over the centuries. Some of these arguments are better than others, but the best explanation may be the one that is most difficult for us to understand. The definition, or I should say the explanation, is this: God exists outside of time. As I said in the sermon on the 21st, the Bible begins with the words, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But what the Bible does not say, and yet what is equally true, is that God created the beginning. God created time. He created time for us. Now, it is impossible to know, or I should say, it is possible to know, but impossible to fully understand, fully comprehend that God has existed from before time. We can understand a little bit easier that God will continue to exist until past the end of time, what we call eternity. Now, we can understand that to a degree because, well, at least if we have a starting point, things continue to exist. I had a starting point. I still exist. Someday I will cease to exist, but, I have seen dead bodies, and even though they might not be inhabited by the person at that point, I can understand that they are still there in some capacity. Well, God exists beyond a body, but and will continue to exist, but he also existed before time began. Everything has a starting point except God. So if God is outside of time, then what that means is that he can look down into time at different points and see any moment of time simultaneously. Now, again, we might believe this to be true, but understanding it is impossible for our finite minds. And that's the point. Our minds and our bodies are finite. God is infinite. Therefore, to us, it appears that God knows what will happen before it happens. The word foreknew is in the past tense. Paul used that word intentionally. And because God does know not only what has happened, but from our perspective, what will happen, he is able to weave what we call history and the future into a harmonious story that is perfectly aligned with what he desires. Now, that's only true because God is not limited by words like before and after. We say before Christ or after death, but that is talking about the ministry of Christ on earth. It is not talking about before God or after God. Everything for God is in the present tense. So God does know in advance, at least from our perspective. And because of that, it also appears that he causes things to happen. And he might. God is absolutely sovereign, and everything is ultimately under his will, so he can cause things to happen. He may cause things to happen on certain occasion, which is why he can guarantee that all things work together for good in his time and for his glory. We see that truth during Holy Week, knowing not only that Jesus would be killed, but that God said how he would be killed in the Old Testament on a tree, said when he would be killed during Passover, and where he would be killed on a hill near Jerusalem. These ideas were all a part of the Old Testament prophecy and were fulfilled exactly as God planned. So that is the idea of foreknew. And tomorrow I will go a little bit deeper into a term that is very similar, and that word is predestined.